I downloaded this particular contract right here off of the internet. I did a Google search for independent contractor agreement, and I kind of just looked to see what I could download without having to like sign up for anything, which is, I'm guessing, what most people do. Okay, and it came up with this agreement right here. So let me start off by saying this agreement is not a fantastically horrible agreement, and it's not a fantastic agreement. So it's kind of like somewhere in between. But having said that, is that if I, as a business contracts lawyer, gave my client who paid me to do a contract for them this document right here, I would probably be sued for malpractice because it's very, very much incomplete. And to be honest with you, this is about par for the types of agreements that you're going to download off of the internet. In this agreement, you'll kind of see that I've highlighted in yellow kind of what stood out to me as a not so good. But then I also highlighted some areas that are just like horrible. Okay, and that's going to be in red. So at first I highlighted this right here, the whereas the client intends to pay the contractor for services provided. I highlighted that in yellow because I felt like it probably could be a little bit more detailed. One of the things that you always want to have in your contract is it should be clear. It should not leave room to interpretation. And so this little preamble right here a lot of times is not absolutely critical, but the more detailed you can be, the better. And also you want to leave a little bit of room for flexibility as well. So that's why it's in yellow. It's not, I don't hate it, but it could be better. This payment section right here, and actually the due date section below, and then the expenses. I highlighted these sections in yellow because I don't love them. And the reason why I don't love them is because you see these check boxes right here. I don't like that. I think it's better to, if whatever section you want to include in there, just put it in there. And the sections that that are not applicable, that you don't want in there, just take them out. Like, I don't like check boxes because you don't want the other party to see what other options they could have had. So in your contract, it should never have anything that's not applicable in the agreement. This green section right here, I particularly liked this because for independent contractor status, it's actually governed by two governing bodies. That's the IRS and that's the Department of Labor. They're completely separate. However, a lot of the regulations for determining whether or not a worker is an employee versus an independent contractor, they actually overlap a lot. And so the Department of Labor has their own kind of checklist for each. But this section right here, I feel like does a pretty good job of kind of drafting around the requirements of making sure that the worker is going to be considered an independent contractor versus an employee. So this is very important. I like that section. This section right here, the business licenses, permits, and certificates, I highlighted it in yellow because I feel like it's just not clear. This right here, all employees and personnel associated, this phrase isn't necessarily contradictory to the rest. However, it is a little bit unclear because all employees and personnel associated with who? The client or the contractor? You get what I'm saying? So I feel like that, it could be a little bit hazy. It's yellow because in the context of the rest of the agreement, I think it is clear that it's talking about the contractor to the independent contractor. However, again, with contracts, it's so much better to be absolutely crystal clear, if at all possible. So let's go down here and scroll. I'm not going to go through every single section, but this indemnification section right here, I don't like it at all. I hate this because it's just not enough to cover either party's interests. I believe this contract right here, I looked through it maybe like for 15 minutes before I got on the video. I believe it's written from the standpoint of for the benefit primarily of the client versus the contractor. And so, yeah, it says the contractor shall indemnify the client. Okay. So here's the thing about that is that there's nothing wrong with necessarily the client being indemnified by the contractor. However, it does need to be a little bit more specific. If I were the contractor, I would want to say, okay, well, I will indemnify you up to a certain amount, for monetary damages, or say I will indemnify you only for very specific things, or I will indemnify you for the actions that I directly caused. This right here does not do any of that. And that's why I hate this. This is this section right here could lose the independent contractor a ton of money because it is just completely inadequate. And, you know, and then the section next to it or right below it, termination of the agreement. I don't like this. Number one, the check boxes. I don't like that. Number two, it doesn't really talk about, you know, right here it says a material breach of the other party. Well, what's a material breach? You know, let's say the independent contractor slides a day or two, you know, for not performing. Is that going to be a material breach? Is time, you know, is time of the essence of the agreement? You know, it should be very, very clear again of what the expectations are of both parties, and then also what is going to be a material breach. This resolving dispute section is highlighted in red because I hate this section, the way that it's written. A really good contract, you know, is going to make sure that you're going to be able to, you know, work your way through disputes, but then also do it in a way that's going to save you a lot of money. A contract is only going to be as good as your ability to enforce it. And if you don't have provisions that are written into it so that you can enforce it in the least expensive way, then it's going to be difficult for you to actually enforce it. And it's not going to be very productive for you, for your company. So this is a huge section right here that I absolutely hate. This confidentiality section I mostly like. You'll see that it's kind of highlighted in green, mostly, and then a little bit in yellow. I 90% like it. And it's pretty thorough, I think. You know, there's a little bit of clauses that I would change, but, you know, if one of my clients came to me with a section like this, I probably would be okay with it as it is. This proprietary information section I hate because it's mislabeled, okay? Proprietary information is what you call confidential information. This right here, they call basically intellectual property proprietary information. Intellectual property, proprietary information are two very completely different things, and this right here just mislabels it, which again causes confusion. And like I said, your contract should be crystal clear. The terms should be what is normally understood by the normal layperson, and proprietary information is understood as confidential information. So the fact that they call intellectual property proprietary information is not good. That's like calling red blue. You know, no, that doesn't work. That's confusing. So I hate that right there. And then also, I think this section needs a lot of work, especially for companies that have a very pronounced online presence, and they do a lot of content creation, which I know a lot of businesses do now. I know for my business, I do a lot of content creation. You want terms that are going to speak to those types of pieces of intellectual property. And this right here does not do that. It's very important that contracts be tailored to what a business is currently doing. And you'll find that a lot of contracts that are being sold on, you know, major sites just are kind of old school, and they don't really take into account that businesses now have a huge online presence, and content creation is a major part of the assets of a business. And this right here just falls completely short of taking into account those points. So when we scroll down, governing law, it's highlighted in yellow. It's okay. It's not uncommon to see a governing law section that's only one sentence long. However, I feel like it really should be expanded to be a little bit more maybe qualified, and add some terminology in there regarding conflict of laws. That's legal jargon, but it's very important. Now, this is the end of the agreement. You'll see that I'd highlighted this section right here. So I'll read it. This agreement, along with any attachments or addendums, represents the entire agreement between the parties. Therefore, this agreement supersedes any prior agreements, promises, conditions, or understandings between the employer and employee. So what that right there just did is it almost nullifies the entire agreement, right? Because if you remember, what I just explained is that you don't want the worker to be considered an employee. You want this particular worker to be considered an independent contractor because they have very different ramifications legally, tax-wise, a whole bunch of things.